Hey Trekkies, it's summer, and you know what that means. It's time for Creation Entertainment's Trek to Las Vegas 2025. This year, the convention has been expanded to a 5-day schedule, August 6th through the 10th at the Rio Las Vegas Hotel. Meet all your favorite Star Trek pros in one place, and hey, maybe you swing by Vic's Lounge and you see our panel. It's a great way to meet people in person and have some fun with your fellow Trekkies. If you can't make it to Star Trek Las Vegas, of course, there's also other events around the country this year. Trek to Orlando, August 23rd through 24th. There's the Trek to New Jersey, September 6th and 7th. And finally, the Trek to Chicago, November 22nd and 23rd. We're looking forward to meeting as many of you as we can this year. So make sure that you get ready to trek to Las Vegas.
Before we begin, I'd like to dedicate this episode to Kent Brady, a wonderful father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and for me, an amazing uncle. Kent, thank you for showing me how to be a good man.
This is Dr. Erin Macdonald, and you're listening to Open Pike Night, the next best thing to Jurassic Park and Star Trek.
Is this thing on? Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Pike Night. I'm your host, John T. Bolds, here tonight with some amazing guests on stage and in the studio to have a conversation with your favorite doctor from Star Trek, even if you don't know her yet. We have done our research, studied hard, and aced our tests. I dare say there's no one who could possibly have ever done more homework than your host did for tonight's show. And our valued guests on the Open Pike Night Stage have come to show their amazing support. Joining me today are my co-hosts, the man who watches the stars and wonders how many of those will be redshifted one day, host of Sudden But Inevitable, Jesse.
I am under strict contractual obligation not to mention time, Crystal. Look, I've got some stipulations tonight. We'll get into it.
And the man who's trying to figure out what kind of dense material he could put the characters of his story in, and made the mistake of asking his kids, who answered without hesitation, Carbonite, host of Green Shirt and Newbie's Trek through TNG, Cameron.
You know that's not a true story because my kids would 100% have just answered poop, no matter what.
Usually, I have an introduction for our guest at this point, but we here at Open Pike Night thought, who better to introduce somebody than their nearest and dearest co-workers?
A brilliant science advisor who works on all of the Secret Hideout Trek shows.
We had a really great technical advisor. She would get back to us. She was like, yes, no, you can't really do this.
Okay, we want to put them somewhere that feels like they're underwater, but they're not. And what would be really dense like that? I don't know a lot about science, but if I could look up a Wikipedia page or Google it or call Erim Macdonald, our science advisor, I remember we had a lot of conversations.
And then once we decided that would be in the episode, then we had to go to Dr. Erin, who's also wonderful and just so smart.
Dr. Erin Macdonald comes into the writer's room. We'll pitch her the episode, and she will think about it. And she's brilliant at finding ways to work that into the story. She's got an amazing sense of story, an amazing sense of character, but also an actual astrophysicist.
It's like, if you're going to do this, this is kind of the realistic way that would happen. And she would actually be just like, don't call it this Star Trek Technobabble, you can actually call it this. So we had help.
I would put in what I think the science is, and then she would read it and she's like, it doesn't actually work that way. And I'm like, great, what's the real science?
So we rely heavily on Dr. Erin Macdonald, the help that she provides us with. She's amazing.
Dr. Erin Macdonald, welcome to Open Pike Night.
Holy cow! Can I get that for my resume?
Absolutely. It'll be in your email as soon as we're done here.
That is the most delightful introduction I've had in so long.
You can actually just put a link to our podcast in your resume and we'll call it
There
good.
you go. I see. Quid pro quo. That's how it works.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Thank you to Davey Perez, Bill Wolkoff, Akela Cooper, and Anitra Johnson, all former guests of Open Pike Night, and all of those are from their interviews with us.
Oh,
so
that's delightful.
Yeah, you are extremely popular.
Thanks.
And finally,
Oh.
the myth and the legend is here.
Yeah, right. They are all wonderful people to work with. Genuinely. Those are all fantastic writers. I have just, working with the Strange New World crowd is such a fun group of people that I'm just so honored that, like, they know me. Oh, that was really delightful. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And Cameron will start us off with the interview tonight.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about you, Erin. So you double majored in physics and math, had a PhD at 25, and seemed to be pretty good at communication. So you're basically Uhura, that's what I'm trying to get at too. And all season 1 in Strange New Worlds, Uhura was looking for her passion. Where does she belong? What does she want to do with her life? What was it that made you discover that science was your passion and was what you wanted to do with your life? What was that origin story?
Deep, hard question to kick things off. I appreciate that. I think, for me, like a lot of people, I think more people than we really give credit to, are fascinated by space and dinosaurs. I feel like when you're a little kid, that's everything and anything. And for me, I was just eternally fascinated by space. And I was very lucky because I was also a big TV and movie fan. And this is in the 90s when I had characters like Dana Scully from The X-Files and Dr. Ellie Arroway from Contact on the screen that I looked at and I was like, oh man, they look awesome. I want to be awesome. They're scientists. They study space. Therefore, I should study space. And that's all the logic that went into it was just, I want to be these characters. So that's what I'm going to do. But honestly, like when I went into my undergraduate, it really was just of the attitude, like, I think I don't know what I want to be when I quote grow up, but I love the idea of going to a university to study space for 4 years. Like that was just cool. I was like, I'm okay at math, but the challenge is interesting enough and it excites me enough that this seems like a fun thing to do, but I never really put thought into what I would do afterwards. And then even when I was an undergraduate and I was thinking about like, what do I do afterwards? The idea of doing a PhD was still really appealing because as an undergraduate, I had just started doing research, which is really what like the true job of a scientist is. It's not being in classes, but it's doing your own research. And so the prospect of going to do a PhD, and for me, especially studying overseas, I moved overseas to Scotland to do my PhD. All of those combined made it really appealing to me. It was like, let's just keep the train going. Like, I still like studying space and maybe I can discover something new and I can like continue pushing our knowledge of like space and astrophysics. And so that all excited me. But honestly, I never had a plan for after that. And I finished my PhD. And I remember I got a postdoc afterwards, which for people who might not be familiar with that, a postdoc is like, you're doing research as a PhD student, you write papers, you publish your dissertation. A postdoc is like an interim between being a PhD student and being a professor. So you're essentially given a contract at a university to continue doing research. Usually do a bit of teaching, but your focus is to keep building on your own research background with the hope that you would just build more credibility, more papers, that you could get a permanent position somewhere. Rough life. You got to really want it. And I started doing this postdoc because I didn't have any other plan. I didn't know what else I wanted to do. And I remember sitting down at that desk and just going like, oh no. This is like forever now. This isn't like a 3 to 4 year adventure. This is the rest of my life. And I don't think I want to do this. And we can go into more details on where things went from there. But I do think that sort of, it was really just that pursuit of knowledge and that love of space and that love for these like fictional characters that just seemed so cool to me that kind of set me on that career path.
You had mentioned Dana Scully, and I know that a lot of our listeners are big Scully heads, Dana fans.
Skulls.
Skulls. Yeah, they're big skulls. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to wax poetic just for a moment on Miss Dana Scully, Dr. Dana Scully.
Dr. Dana Scully, what a freaking powerhouse of a character. Oh God. I mean, you said for a few minutes. I'm going to try to rein it in because this could go on for a really long time. You even go back, the X-Files really holds up, which is hard to do. 90s sci-fi had a lot of ups and downs. And the characters of Mulder and Scully were so good and their interactions together. But I think in particular, like, I was this young redheaded girl watching this woman just be badass. She was an FBI agent. She would do autopsies like without blinking an eye. The point where I'm like, don't know if that's for me. That looks pretty rough. And she would fight aliens, and like at no point was she ever doubted in comparison to Mulder. And like to have a character like that in the 90s, I think was so powerful. And just the show itself, what I loved, the reboot that they did where they kind of brought out a couple more seasons was, rightfully criticized up and down for its various perspectives. But one thing that I really liked, especially the first of the reboot season that they did, was like they had 6 episodes and they hit every type of X-Files fan. Like there was a creepy episode, there was a funny episode, there was a government conspiracy episode.
The political, social...
There was a social commentary episode.
That's it.
Yeah. And like they really, and so for basically all of the 90s, we were just blessed with this show that was so creepy at times. Like anyone who watched the X-Files has that episode that put them off it for like a good year, at least. It's different for everyone. There's a lot of overlap. The black and white family cult, I think, is one that lives in a lot of people's lives. But the X-Files is so good.
Good.
I also like to say I'm basically the personification of Mulder's poster, because everyone asks, like, do you want aliens to be real? And I'm like, I want them to be real. Like, trust me, as a scientist, if I'm convinced, I will shout it from the rooftops.
Speaking of scientists of late have been given the advice of tell me a story. And it's something that scientists have had a hard time doing for a long time. And obviously, you are very good at telling stories and have an appreciation and knowledge of how to tell them. So what stories influenced you the most when you were young? What really got you into story as a scientist?
I do think telling stories is so important. And just to kind of I think what's so hard for scientists when it comes to communicating with the public is, especially in a field like mine, which is very heavily mathematics based, as you go into it, even starting as a freshman studying this for a degree, your language becomes mathematics. And you forget that it can be taught without it because mathematics purely describes it. It purely gives you the most easy answer. You just put it into the equation and you get your answer. And so why would you need to kind of wax poetically about why this orbit follows this pattern when you just have an equation that explains that? And so I think it's really hard for scientists to kind of take that step back and be like, okay, but what does this mean without the equations? Because we're trained for so long to use the equations as our language. But that aside, for me personally, I mentioned the X-Files, I mentioned Contact, but another film that really stood out for me was Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park is a fantastic movie. God damn, that movie's so good. But I also love, I mean, it's a slightly cheesy now and a little tropey example, but it's a trope for a reason, is the Mr. DNA explanation and the exposition that kicks off the story. And you know what? Like, as a kid watching Jurassic Park, I was like, I kind of get how DNA works now. So even within a movie, they were able to teach me science. And that, I think, has just driven my passions, and where I have found myself is just like, using stories in science fiction to teach science is so powerful. And there's so much capability there because science is hard and communicating science is even harder, especially when you're trained to communicate with math. But if you're able to point to a movie or a TV show and say, so you've seen Jurassic Park, right? Like when they talk about like the frog DNA, like you can use those examples to teach real science, whether or not that is fictional or not. It's still a starting point for the audience you're talking to.
Excellent. And all of this, of course, will have a big musical score at the end. Bum, bum, bum. But until then, on with Jesse's question.
Which, wow, I
No coming back.
gone, John. That's
the best thing that's ever been said on this podcast.
yeah. I actually know what my next question was. Oh, it was. It's interesting that you would sort of boil the issue down to translation. As our friend Spock might say, you are so dependent on language, but is any of you truly its master? I do have to. I'm just having a little bit of a moment here, and I have to share it with everybody. Not only am I currently sharing a hailing frequency with Dr. Erim Macdonald, but she and I hail from the same frequency, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Northern Colorado love seems a little more frequent these days. I was like, you guys, as soon as John said Dr. Erin picked this time, I went to your website and I texted them both immediately. You guys, she's from where I'm from. And like, beyond just being incredibly cool and making me feel like a little kid, which I always do in recording this show, I'm sure our listeners are perfectly aware. I think it actually really does help to illustrate that people on Star Trek, people that are making stories that are affecting the lives of people in real life, can come from anywhere. And it's like, as you're out there listening, going, man, I love Open Pike Night, or maybe I should call in, or like, these are such cool Star Trek stories. Like, maybe you're the next person, right? Like, maybe you're the next person in Star Trek. That's I think what I'm trying to illustrate here, beyond just going, hey, guess what? I share a cool thing with Dr. Erin, which is just very cool.
So, Dr. Erin, you've talked about cool scientist heroes of yours doing cool things out in the field, whether it's Jurassic Park or alien abduction sites. We've talked about story. So how did we get from this, staring into the abyss of numbers and math and research, and how did you get from there to telling stories out in the real world?
It's been a long road. Getting from there to here.
That's what I hear.
See you guys later.
Yeah. And I'm done. No, like, we talk about, and Jesse, as you mentioned, like, people can come from anywhere to work in this sort of industry. I think it actually benefits you to come from any background, like to come from a lot of different backgrounds. For me, this is like literally career number 4, at least. And I was working in academia, not liking it. I was on a visa living in the UK. So because I was leaving academia, I had to leave the country. Thank you, Theresa May. We'll always be bitter, but that's fine. And moved back to Colorado. And I started teaching at community college. I started teaching at science museums, which, sidebar, for any science background person who wants to get more involved in science communication, go volunteer at a science museum. Like, go spend some time, because the whole shift you are talking to anyone and everyone about science. And that is a fire hose of experience for science communication. So I did that, but it didn't pay the bills. So I was also working at Starbucks. I was working like 90 hours a week, and it was really, really stressful. And I started working in aerospace engineering, which paid the bills. And I got to feel like Dana Scully, which was great. But I really missed teaching. And so I started going to sci-fi conventions, and I would start explaining science behind things like artificial gravity or faster than light travel or Mass Effect or Star Trek or Star Wars or all of these different things, just because that was what I was passionate about. I love teaching and I love using sci-fi to do that. And a sci-fi convention audience is like perfect for it. It's a group of people who are excited to meet a scientist who have this opportunity and they're really interested in it. And so from that, I moved out to Los Angeles. I was still working in aerospace. I was on Star Trek's radar because of all of these talks. And so I got invited to give these talks at their official events. And then that's how I started working behind the scenes as all of these shows started getting developed. But for me personally, and the epiphany that I sort of had, which I alluded to earlier, was especially when Prodigy came up, because Captain Janeway genuinely was my mentor that got me through graduate school. Like, I would not have finished my PhD if it wasn't for Captain Janeway, because I would watch Voyager and I would be like, I didn't have a plan to be a professor. And doing a PhD sucks. No one should do it. It's horrible. It's like the worst time of your life. It's the most stressful thing you'll ever go through. And so there were many times where I was like, why the hell am I doing this? I don't have this end goal of becoming a professor. Why am I putting myself through this? And I would watch Voyager and I would see Captain Janeway and I was like, well, she's a science officer. She's a leader. I don't want to let her down. Like, she's going to be really disappointed in me if I walk away from this. So I'm going to keep going. And I dedicated
drink your coffee and
I made more coffee and I just got to it. And I dedicated my PhD thesis to her, to Captain Janeway, just saying, like,
that's so cool.
I could not have done this PhD without her. And then it all came full circle when I got hired to work on Prodigy. And I go and they're like, so we hear you have a tattoo of Voyager. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, you're going to want to sit down. And that's when it all came together, that I realized I wasn't meant to become Captain Janeway or Dana Scully. Like, I was meant to write those characters. I love these stories. I love film. I love television. I just want to tell stories. And the idea of being able to inspire future generations to get into science and to get into STEM, like, that is where my passion lies. And it all just kind of collided really quickly in a grand epiphany that left me crying in my car in the 405, as so many people do. But it was such a, genuinely, for someone who had spent like 30 years of their life just not knowing what they wanted to do other than join Starfleet or fight aliens, like, it was a perfect moment for me. So that's kind of what got me to where I am now.
Did you get a chance to meet Kate Mulgrew yet?
Yeah, I've met her a couple times. So I got to meet her before I was working on Prodigy. I may have been working on Star Trek at the time, but I think it was probably a secret. Actually, I wasn't working on Star Trek. I was giving my talks, and I was at the same convention that Kate Mulgrew was at. And so I brought my dissertation. I made sure my schedule had a moment where she was signing and I wasn't speaking. And I stood in line with my dissertation and I went up to her, and it was the most beautiful, most awkward interaction I've ever had in my life. I'm like, here's a giant dissertation, and you open it up, and PhD in astrophysics, and it says, to Captain Janeway, she'll never know how much she meant. And she was kind of like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I don't have anything articulate to say to you. It's on the page. She was like, I don't know how to respond to this. This is a freaking PhD. And it was a beautiful moment. And we had a photo op later that she was able to kind of gather her thoughts more. And she said some really wonderful things to me. I've met her a couple times since then, but the joke is I legitimately black out every time I talk to her. I don't know what I say. I don't remember any conversation. I'm super intimidated by her. I just hope I haven't made an ass of myself, but she's really nice from what I remember.
Well, that all leads very nicely into our first caller question.
Hey, Open Pike and Dr. Erin. It's Abby Summer from the First Flight podcast. And first of all, thank you all for the great work that you do in all aspects of Trekdom and podcasting. It's always a joy to hear all of you. And Dr. Erin, I wanted to ask you specifically about some of the work that you've done on Prodigy. I have 2 young girls that I watch Prodigy with, and they are absolutely enthralled. And I'm wondering the difference between consulting on Star Trek shows that are aimed for an older audience and a younger audience. And I wanted to give you a compliment on the Hive Mind video that you did, because that was perfect for explaining both the Medusans and the Borg to my daughters. So thank you so much for all that you do, and I hope you and yours are well.
Thank you. That's a great question. Every single show I work on is very different in terms of how much they use me as a science advisor, but I would definitely say that Prodigy stands out being targeted towards kids, in the sense that, yes, I still do the traditional science advising of like, are we explaining this correctly? Is this the right phrase to use? Is this the right technology that we're doing? What's the science behind it? But there's another layer of STEM education that goes into advising on that show. And as someone who has worked with kids and who teaches science to children, that is also an aspect of being able to contribute to the show. Like, how are we going to explain these things in a way that kids make sense, or that it makes sense to kids, and knowing that we're going to have to say it 2 or 3 different ways, knowing that it's going to have to make sense one way or another. What's the right level for them? And then really, a character like Rock Talk, who's really into science and she's discovering her own identity as a scientist. She's really excited to discover science. That's really a lot, my own childhood experience of being interested in science in general, but not knowing where to start and trying to discover that and trial and error. And, it's like, I remember I was so bad at building Lego. That I pushed through because I loved it so much and I loved the idea of it, but I was so bad at it. I was like, maybe I shouldn't be an engineer, maybe I'm really bad at engineering. And so translating that in a way that kids can relate to it and see those struggles and see how kids adapt and move on. And just because you're not natural at one science, if you love it, keep pursuing it. If you don't love it, there are other sciences out there, and trying to get that message across is really important.
I gotta say, I love Prodigy, like full stop, love Prodigy. The scene where Rock Talk is like, I don't remember the number of sciences, but she's looking through all the different kinds of sciences. I was like, I almost had tears in my eyes because I was like, this is going to affect kids, and you can tell watching it that it is well written to affect kids. And so you have instructed college students, as you mentioned, as well as kids, and you've written a Star Trek children's book about space. I gotta ask you, who is easier to teach?
Oh God. That's a really tough question. Well, okay, so thank you for the plug on my book. The book is called Star Trek, My First Book of Space, and it's a board book technically targeted towards 0 to 2-year-olds, which, let me tell you, is a hard age to write for. That is tough. That's like 11 sentences to explain space in as few syllables as possible. But I think what's so fun, and what I really tried to do, especially with that book, came from my experience talking to adults and trying to teach science to adults, is that I've learned over the years that everyone loves space when they're kids, but you kind of stop at the solar system. There's not a lot of people who have learned much beyond that. We're in a galaxy, and there's things like black holes and other stars out there, but there's not much knowledge that goes beyond that. And so even when I came to writing this book, I didn't want to talk down to kids, and I didn't want to talk down to the parents who are probably reading this to their kids. And so I wanted it to go beyond just the solar system. And one of the things I like really teaching is the idea of our cosmological address, that we live on a planet that's in a solar system, that's in a galaxy cluster, that's in our universe. And what does that mean? And what else is out there? And so it really excites me to kind of bring this new perspective in science education that comes from Star Trek, and also this idea of our cosmological address. I think adults are, I don't know, it's so hard because I've literally run into kids who are 8 who can challenge me on black hole knowledge. Kids love space.
And dinosaurs.
And they know a lot about it, and they're so excited and willing to learn. And then I will get nearly into a fist fight with an adult about Pluto. And it's like,
well, wait. Which side are you on?
Pluto's not a planet. We learned more. That's how science works. It doesn't diminish it as an object in our solar system. We have learned more. That's how science works. I'm so sorry. I'm not dissing
All right,
Pluto.
We'll see you guys. It was nice talking to you all. See you later. Bye. It's got a heart on it, though, Dr. Erin. There's a heart.
It loves us. I know. But, this idea that we saw Pluto first because it's highly reflective. It has a ton of ice on it. Our telescopes got better. We started to see that there's a whole belt of objects out there that are around Pluto's size, if not bigger. And we just had to be like, well, maybe Pluto shouldn't be a planet. Maybe it should be like an object like we would treat in the asteroid belt. And we should come up with this new classification. And it's a perfect example of how science works, and especially how astronomy works, because we can't recreate this stuff in the lab. We just have to rely on technology and see what the universe is giving us, and then refactor our knowledge and just bounce back and forth between what physics has taught us and then what we observe. And the idea that you can have objects that are so massive that they're round, but not massive enough that they can't clear out their orbit. They exist in like an asteroid belt with other objects. That's a new classification. And so as adorable as Pluto is, and I'm not diminishing it, I would say this conversation is a hell of a lot easier to have with a 5-year-old than it is with someone in their 60s.
That was a delightful answer.
Well, speaking of science continuing to learn, let's listen to Sayadina's question.
Hello, everyone at Open Pike. Happy to be calling in again and to welcome a new guest. Thank you, Dr. Erin, for spending time with us all and for joining in on this discussion with us. I think it is amazing that you are a science consultant for Star Trek. That must be an absolute dream. You are truly blessed. I love science and science fiction and always get so excited whenever real science can be incorporated into Star Trek. Although I wouldn't define the series as a hard science show by any means, which I kind of dream that one day hard science will be more accepted into the mainstream. Real life is undoubtedly always stranger than fiction, but is never easy to define, which is probably why it doesn't translate well, as we often desire things to be, quote unquote, make sense to how we understand them. But speaking of which, I was curious what your thoughts were on the current predicament in science. Things are looking pretty dismal, that regardless of higher and higher energies at the Hadron Collider, there have been no new discoveries. Supersymmetry, string theories, weakly interacting massive particles, nothing is coming up. We haven't solved the hierarchy problem, dark matter or dark energy or quantum gravity. Why do you think this is? Are we going about these theories all wrong? What theory do you feel is most scientifically plausible? And do you believe it is possible that we'll ever solve all the mysteries of the universe? Thank you so much. I wish you many more exciting days exploring our universe and sharing in the joy of Trek. This is Sayadina signing off.
Oh, thank you, Sayadina. I really appreciate that question. And I think it's one that a lot of people may know, but not have articulated as well as you have, in the sense that we remember 10, 15 years ago, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, was going to solve a lot of problems. And it was going to answer a lot of questions that we have. And like you said, that hasn't quite come to fruition. Now, the main thing was the Higgs boson. And so without getting too much into it, they did manage to discover the Higgs boson, which is one of these like fundamental uniting particles in physics that we needed to discover to understand where these subsequent particles that make up atoms come from. But things like string theory in particular, was huge in the early 2000s and has kind of faded away. The idea of quantum gravity has also faded away a little bit. Like you said, dark matter and dark energy. There's these things that we like to say are the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns. And things like string theory were a known unknown. Like there was a lot of theory about it. There was this idea of, okay, if you go down to the most fundamental particles, you should be able to see this. You should be able to see something that exhibits X, Y, and Z properties. And we haven't seen that, unfortunately. And that's just how things like particle and astrophysics work, is that you come up with these theories that might explain the type of behavior we're seeing, and then you have to either observe it or build experiments to try to observe it. And if you don't, you got to go back to the drawing board. Now, when it comes to quantum gravity, this is the search. If I'm interpreting what you're saying correct, everyone kind of will say terms like quantum gravity. They might mean different things. What I hear when people talk about quantum gravity is the idea that there is a gravity particle. So we have a light particle, which is a photon. We have our other forces of nature, which are the weak and strong nuclear forces like gluons that hold a nucleus together, for example. And gravity, if you think of it like a force, should have a particle. Like it should have a corresponding particle to it, and it doesn't. And so does that mean that our understanding of gravity is wrong? And for me, I'm a general relativist, which means that I don't see gravity as a force. I see gravity as the shape of our universe due to the presence of mass. So it's the bowling ball on the trampoline theory, right? That our universe is a fabric of space and time, that you place a bowling ball on it, that's going to curve it down. You flick a marble, that's going to orbit it. And you can create things like precession, like Mercury precesses around the sun. It traces out a flower shape as it goes around the sun that can only be explained by this type of fabric, by this type of manifold geometry, very heavy math stuff. But there's no force that's required for it. It's literally just objects responding to the shape of our universe. And so general relativists and particle physicists have like a long history of animosity in a ridiculous, adorable way. Like, no, there's a gravity particle. No, it's the shape of our universe. And I fall on the side of it's the shape of our universe. And the fact that we haven't discovered anything with the Large Hadron Collider tends to lean toward that, in addition to the fact that we have discovered gravitational waves, which is literally the motion of the fabric of our universe due to things like black holes colliding. And then on top of that, we have our unknown unknowns, which are things like dark matter and dark energy, where we see their presence, but we have no idea where to look for that. You mentioned WIMPs, which are weakly interacting massive particles. So things like neutrinos have been postulated as possible examples of dark matter. There's just not enough neutrinos that we've seen out there to make up for that. And so we don't know what we're looking for in that sense, and that makes it even harder. So the Large Hadron Collider still might find something. It's just that we don't know what we're looking for when it comes to discovering things like that. And all of that is in the grand pursuit of science, so for better or worse, I mean, I've legitimately made my entire scientific career on not discovering things and the impact of that. Like, what does that mean that we haven't discovered anything? And that sets upper limits. It sets statistical thresholds that you can just say, well, we know up until this amount. And beyond that, we can still get better. But yeah, I really appreciate your question. It's fascinating, and I'm excited to see where our technology is going to go next.
Jesse, did you get all that? I got that, but did you get that?
I mean, you were just reciting from your children's book, right? Is that
you said that?
Yeah,
but you just for I have to ask, and I'm going to check on that because I got that book. I have to ask for the Trekkies in the audience. So gravitons, then is that what the term would be in Trek if gravity were a force? Is that like they just took photon and put gravity on it?
Correct. Gravitons is one of those technically scientific term that Star Trek didn't make up, but we have never discovered them. And you may notice a little bit of a bias from your local friendly science advisor that gravitons do not make as much of a presence as they did in TNG.
So one of my favorite episodes of Strange New Worlds was Memento Mori, which of course features a very cool black hole. I'll just quickly say we thought it was funny that one of the guys said brace for heavy gravity, like duh. But there were no gravitons mentioned. I will point that out. We did notice no gravitons.
Thank you.
Were there some in the original scripts? Can you tell us that?
We know how to make you mad now, yeah.
Yeah, right. I shall throw no one under the bus. No.
We already talked to Davey. It's okay.
Davey was so fun to work with on that episode, yeah.
Well, yes, that was all very an intelligent question and answer. Let's throw a softball now. The other day, my daughter, who's 6, and she loves princesses, but thankfully she also loves planets. And she came up to me and told me she wants to be a scientist. And I said, hey, Daddy's going to be talking to a scientist soon from that space show he watches. Do you want to ask her a question? And she said, sure. So I did not set her up at all. I told her she had to say thank you, and she had to say hello. And even that, she improvised a little, as you're about to hear.
It.
Merry Christmas. I see the big spot on Neptune just like Jupiter. What are those spots? Thank you.
Just like the Grinch, my heart grew 3. That is a great question. What's her name?
Rebel is her name.
Rebel. Thank you, Rebel. That is a great question. So it's awesome that you noticed that both Jupiter and Neptune, which are gas giants, so they're giant planets that are made mostly of gas, have these giant spots on them. Now, those spots are almost as big, if not bigger, than Earth. And what they really are massive hurricanes or tornadoes. Like, they're big storms. So if you look closely, it's easier to see with Jupiter than it is with Neptune. Jupiter also has what look like different colored stripes. All those different stripes show different layers or different temperatures, so it's hot or colder. And as those different layers interact with each other, they can make storms. And what happens is those storms become giant big dots. And what's really exciting with Jupiter in particular is that dot, what we call the big red spot, might not last much longer. We've seen it sort of getting a little bit smaller, changing in size, and that's just that the storm is calming down. And so it's awesome that you've seen those. We've looked for those on Saturn and Uranus, which are the other 2 big gas giants in our solar system. We haven't seen storms that big, but it's entirely possible there could be. And maybe even in our own lifetime, we'll see them.
It's funny that she asked that because, like, yeah, everyone knows the great red spot, right? But I've also noticed the dot on Neptune, and I've kind of idly wondered, like, why doesn't that have a name? Why don't people talk about that one? But I'm an adult, so I don't ask questions like that.
It does have a name, Cameron. It's called the Great Dark Spot.
That's literally what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you just Google that, Jesse?
No. Oh, come on. Really? I can't know a thing, too.
Oh, God. I love you say that, though, that it's like, I've noticed that, but I was too afraid to ask. That's so, when it comes to science communication, that is deeply relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are like that.
Well, so that, I mean, my daughter's question and like her wanting to be a scientist kind of brings up the question I hate to ask because like you're already a rocket scientist. You already have the weight of the Star Trek universe's scientific plausibility on your shoulders. But yet, until it's less of an exception, you are also a role model for women in STEM. You are an avatar for that. How do you like see that responsibility and how does that kind of affect the choices you make in your career and how you pursue them?
Yeah, oh God, no pressure, right?
Right.
When I was leaving academia, I carried that as a huge weight. I really felt like I was abandoning future generations from having mentors, from having people that they could see in the professional field of science. And then I realized, like, there are many ways that one can be a mentor. In my own life, right, my mentors have been fictional characters, and that doesn't take away from what they've been able to give me. And so maybe it is someone that you just happen to meet or see at the library or giving a talk somewhere that you could be like, oh man, they're a scientist too. I don't have to be working at a university to be able to be a scientist. And one thing I'm particularly passionate about is that I'm also heavily tattooed and wear a lot of very intense gothic clothing 90% of the time. And I've gone to schools before, especially high schools. I love when I go to a high school and this happens because the teachers will say, Dr. Macdonald is an astrophysicist, and she's here to talk to us about science careers today. Half the class is like, checked out. Do not care. All right, this is great. This is the equivalent of wheeling in the TV cart, right? I'm done. And then I walk in, and I'm a woman, younger, and I'm covered in tattoos, and it is not what they're expecting. And you can see that in their eyes where they're just like, oh, wait. You can almost see the neurons like flashing and connecting and building new connections. And I love that. That's some of the greatest joy that I get, is just to defy those expectations of what a scientist means. And I particularly like the ungendered or non-gendered title of doctor. You know, you go back and forth, because when you're in academia, you don't throw it around because everyone has a PhD. Like, as dorky as it is, literally everyone has a PhD. So they're like, this doctor, so-and-so.
Doctor.
And when you leave, people have a hell of a lot of respect for it. But I always kind of carry that imposter syndrome, because I come from this place where we all have PhDs. Like, that's what I did. And people outside of academia are like, no, like, you worked really hard for that. I wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. These other people wouldn't do it. Like, that, you should be really proud of that. And so having that confidence to say, no, I have a PhD. Yes, I am doctor. I don't insist that people call me doctor, but it's nice to have that as my title, because it defies these expectations when people see me versus what my title is. And it's hard. It can be a lot of pressure to try to be a good role model, but I think the best thing I can do is just be my authentic self. That makes people, even if they just relate to the fact that I play video games, you know, and I'm a scientist, then at least it's like, oh, cool. I had that happen when I went to, it was in Fort Collins, actually. I was speaking in Fort Collins, and one of the people who had helped organize brought his like 10-year-old son up, and he was like, hey, you know, this is Dr. Erin. Sorry, he really wants to be playing video games right now. And I said, oh man, yeah, I left my PlayStation at home. Like, I really wish I could be playing them too. And he was kind of like visibly like, what? You play video games?
Record scratch. That's right. Dr. Erin plays video games.
Step 1, play video games. Step 2, PhD.
Seriously.
Yeah. Literally a record scratch in that kid's brain. Like, you could see it blow his mind. And I love that. I love defying those expectations, because it makes science more accessible to kids.
You ever tempted to just walk out with an electric guitar, go full Buckaroo Banzai on everybody? And,
all right. Not that cool, man. Let's rein it in.
I think it's great that you bring that up. So last night I found out that Mass Effect is about to be free on PlayStation, and I put the feelers out there. I said, hey, if I like Star Trek, will I like Mass Effect? Because I've not played it. And a lot of people immediately went, oh, you have to play? Are you kidding me? Like, it's the greatest thing. And I'm going to start playing Mass Effect soon. So I'll shoot you an email if I get stuck.
Please do. I'm going to refrain on giving my 38-point essay on why Mass Effect is the greatest video game of all time. And every Star Trek nerd should play it, but...
But you will be back to give that dissertation live for us because excellent.
Just push through navigating the Mako on the planet surfaces, and for anyone who gets that, thank you.
Yes.
Mass Effect 2 and 3 don't have that. It's worth it. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I'm so excited.
Mass Effect 2 is literally the greatest video game ever made, and I will fight people on that one.
Well, very soon we do want to dive into just Star Trek geekery, but let's get one more question from Jen.
And I love this question.
Okay, this is a two-part question. What question have you always wanted to have been asked but have never been asked? And of course, the second part of that would be, what's the answer?
Thank you, Jen.
Oh, God damn it.
Perfectly phrased.
That's so great. What have I always wanted to be asked? Who do I ship in Star Trek?
Ooh.
Really?
All right.
I get asked every science question possible, which is great, and I love answering them. But I also write a hell of a lot of fan fiction, and no, you cannot have my Archive of Our Own username.
Oh, wow. But there is one. Okay. All right.
But
Okay.
it exists. I have literally 3 shadow accounts on Archive of Our Own.
Okay. Okay.
If people find
Dr.
it,
Erin.
it might be okay. There's like, if people find it, I hope they don't share it. And there's like, this should never be discovered.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. I have
Listeners,
to.
you know what to do.
Okay. And I have to make a bet here, right? Like one of them has to be Janeway Chakotay.
Okay. All right. Oh, Lord. Okay. No disrespect to the Janeway and Chakotay fans out there, but I have opinions. I think Janeway's perfect partner was always the Irish bartender in Fairhaven.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I love that episode. It gets so much crap because it's rightfully ridiculous, but in the best Star Trek ridiculous way. I watch that episode every time I'm sick because it just makes me happy and it makes me feel good. And I love the idea that, like, even the Doctor and Chakotay all call her out and they're like, look, we see how you act as a leader. Like, we know you can't get the badongadonk. Like, do what you need, man. Like, go delete the wife to your heart's content. Like, that's what you want to do. Yeah, again, I respect Janeway Chakotay shippers. I am not one of them. I'll put it that way. I do not see the chemistry. I love her gothic romances. I love Counterpoint, her tension with the Devore Imperium dude who like tried. Oh, such a good episode. I would say in Voyager, probably my biggest. I love the Doctor and Seven and their ability to discover humanity together. I really ship the two of them. Sorry, Harry. I know Harry really wanted Seven in that one. And then Deep Space Nine is also. I mean, we all can agree it's. I'm trying to think of an appropriate way to say this. Is the most potential for relationships. I'll say it that way. Garrick, I think, is my favorite. I don't even have to say I think. Garrick is my favorite character in Star Trek. And his relationship, romantic or otherwise, with Bashir is fantastic. Bashir's bromance with O'Brien is one of the best relationships out there. So I could go on, but I won't. I will take another
But you
hour.
possibly have in written form.
And I will only push you for one series because we're primarily a Strange New Worlds podcast.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Strange New World ship?
Okay. So original series, it would have been Spock and Uhura. I was very pleased when 2009 Kelvin Timeline pulled on that thread because that has been there, in my opinion, from day one of the original series. But I also, original series, happily would ship Spock and Chapel. Spock and anyone, let's be perfectly honest. Spock has got it going for him. But Nurse Chapel, I think her relationship with Spock that they set up in the original series and how we have seen it played out in Strange New Worlds makes me so happy, and it's so delightful. And I do think they've set up really well, in my opinion, as a shipper, fandom, fanfiction writer, like Uhura and Spock having a good relationship, like a strong relationship where you can see that, but you can also see the potential for a genuinely romantic relationship between Spock and Chapel, regardless of how that ends up playing out. But man, Jess is so good as Nurse Chapel. Like, God damn it. I remember reading the scripts and really hesitant because I've always loved Nurse Chapel. And again, as a Star Trek Spock fangirl, I deeply related to her standing outside his room with some food to be like, notice me, Spock. But that could go many directions. And the way that they wrote Chapel was great, but then the way that Jess Bush was able to interpret that character, I just freaking love her, and she's phenomenal.
Thank you so much for that question, Jen.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Jen. That I really took that in a very different direction.
Delightful. Perfect direction.
Good.
So we are going to dive more into Star Trek as a culture, as what it has become. And my first question is always, when did it hit you that you were entering into Star Trek? That you had lived several lives before where you are now, and even when you move on or in another, this is with you for the rest of your life. When did that hit you?
So my first job working on Star Trek was for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, doing science of the burn. And that was developing a lot of science of dilithium, which obviously has been around for 55 years in fictional form, and having to add layers of science on top of that didn't contradict science that had come before, quote, science that had come before, was a lot of pressure. And I will say, like, I felt that pressure, and I felt the need to do it right and to do it justice. It hit me, I think, when not just seeing my name in credits, because if anyone has worked in Hollywood, it's not real until you actually see it. Like, your scene's gonna get cut, you're disregarded. Like, it's until you actually see it shared with the public that you're like, okay, this is real. So I was very stressed out about actually seeing that. And then when I saw it, it was like, oh, okay, I'm legitimate, I'm here. And then it was the season finale of season 3 of Discovery, which was beautiful in its own right. Like, that was the whole Federation coming back together, and like and we meet the guy again that they had met at the beginning of the season. And then they played, like because the Federation was back together, they played a very original series feeling score over the final credits, and seeing, like, having that emotional build up to the season finale, and then those credits over that song, and seeing my name in that, that was it. That was ugly. That was ugly. That was ugly crying. And that, like you said, I mean, that there's a difference between knowing you work for Star Trek, there's a difference between contributing to Star Trek, and there's a difference between realizing that you are a part of this franchise. And that is a big deal and weird.
Excellent. So obviously you were a Trekkie before. And what would you call, we call it our home Trek here. What is your Trek? Like, what, when you go back, what's your comfort Trek?
Ooh, okay. Yeah. See, because there's many different ways that question could have gone.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of answers you could have.
Yeah.
What's your comfort Trek?
My comfort Trek is Voyager, because of Captain Janeway, and like that word comfort. Like, it just, there's very few episodes that I don't love to just sit back and watch. You know, if Voyager's on, or if I'm in the mood to just have some Star Trek on in the background, I will go to Voyager. My favorite series to watch is Deep Space Nine. A lot more stressful.
Well, obviously, you have great taste, so yeah. I mean, of course, it's Deep Space Nine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more like high stakes, if that makes sense. Like, it's not relaxing, because if I'm gonna sit down and watch Deep Space Nine, I'm probably not gonna get up from the couch for the next 12 hours. And also, I've started a rewatch, and also I'll be here. Like, you know, like, I fall into Deep Space Nine so easily because it's that good. But just the show that I can put on an episode, feel happy, feel like I'm in Star Trek. And I actually do this when I'm struggling. Like, you know, we're not going to couch it. Life is hard. Like, careers are hard. It's still a job at the end of the day, and it has its own ups and downs. And there are times where I need to remind myself that I work for Star Trek, and remind myself of the job that I have. I'll put on an episode of Voyager, and I'm like, oh, this shit's really good. I'm really proud of being here.
What episodes do you put on?
Well, Fairhaven, like I mentioned. Honestly, a lot of them. I think seasons 5 and 6 I feel are like the strongest for me. Like those are the ones I go to a lot. And I'm constantly rediscovering ones that I don't normally watch. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but if you have Paramount Plus, there's a live TV option. And I never click that on streamers. 1, because I normally don't subscribe to it. 2, because I don't feel like watching live TV. But if you scroll down, there's a Star Trek channel and it's commercial free. And it just randomly plays Star Trek episodes. So if you haven't discovered that, go do that. And yeah, I think, Counterpoint is my favorite Star Trek episode, like, period. If I had to pick one episode, it would be Counterpoint. But yeah, I would say most of like seasons 5, 6, and 7. I love Pathfinder. I love the Barclay reintegration into Voyager. His efforts to bring them home. That whole sort of set of episodes are just delightful.
Forget that, Cam. Forget you heard that.
What? I have not seen
Barclay
DS9 or Voyager yet. They are on my I'm watching TNG for the first time myself. It's fine. It's fine. It's a 30-year-old show.
I didn't say that he was successful. I didn't say he was in it a lot, but I'm very sorry I spoiled that for you.
Oh,
everyone in Voyager dies, Cam. So just so you know,
they never get home.
That's how
it's
it
weird.
is.
They just,
I do know that. I think
it is rough.
Oh my god, I really want to mess now, but I'm not going to.
We'll get you back for an episode of Dr. Erin Messes with Cam.
Yeah. we'll talk about. I'm going to give you a bunch of Voyager plots, and you have to decide whether they're real or not.
Oh, that sounds fun. Actually, I do know people turn into lizards at one point. That's pretty much the only plot I know. I do know that one.
I have the Threshold action figure on my desk.
Oh, yes, that is wonderful.
That is a classic. Oh.
Tom
Fantastic.
Paris's face in that whole episode. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. What's been your favorite fan reaction to Strange New Worlds?
I think just the expectations were so high coming from season 2 of Discovery, seeing Anson Mount as Pike, and Ethan Peck as Spock. People had very high expectations, selling it as an episodic show, which is rare, not just for recent Star Trek, but for TV in general. I think people weren't sure what to expect. And man, they just knocked it out of the park. Like, I feel just myself watching it and feeling like, holy crap, this is a good goddamn TV show. And then to see that everyone else felt the same way really made me proud and really made me happy. I think it was episode 2 or 3 of Strange New Worlds where I was watching it and I cry a lot. It might come to surprise you that I'm a very emotional person. I feel things very deeply. So it's not unheard of for me to just be crying while I'm watching television, for better or worse, or any of those things. But I was watching Strange New Worlds and I just had this like tear just streaming down my cheek because I was like, this show is so good. And like, I'm so proud of being even tangentially associated with a show that is this good. It's just awesome. Yeah, I love it. And then of course you mentioned the Memento Mori episode and the black hole and the brown dwarf, and getting to do a Ready Room episode for that, to explain the science behind that episode was really fun. And so that episode, like if I had to pick any, that would be my favorite memory of Strange New Worlds for sure, because I was so happy with how that turned out.
Memento Mori, I think, for a lot of people was like, okay, this show is good, and then, oh, this show is great. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
What's been the weirdest fan reaction you've seen to Strange New Worlds?
Reddit got really weird about the episode with Uhura and the language, where she's trying to decipher the musical language, but like in a good way. Like, language Reddit went bonkers for it. And it wasn't something I had personally put a lot of stress onto. Like, I view language through mathematics. I think mathematics is a language. I think math should be taught as a language, and I think people would have a better relationship with math if we did teach it as a language. And so I've always approached that. And so when we were kind of developing how Uhura would talk about the frequencies and the resonance and how these all play with each other and how the mathematics would build on that and how she can use those mathematical relationships to establish communication, for me, that was very natural because I'm coming at it from a math perspective. But linguists Reddit lost their mind, like in the best way. They were like, yes, this is great. This is awesome. And of course, I mean, I'm not speaking for everyone, but it was really fun and exciting to see like a field that, like, I was approaching it as a mathematician with mathematics background without a linguist background. And to have linguists who have all expertise totally different than mine, just as valid, see where I'm coming from and love that interpretation was really exciting and weird. Like that, it was weird.
In that episode, Spock says that the fundamental nature of musical notes is what Vulcans theorize gives them their pleasing nature. Was that you?
I don't want to take credit for any writing of the dialogue, but I think it's more in the conversation about how we think of language and exactly. I mean, it more comes out of the conversation that I just explained, that sitting in the writer's room being like, okay, how are we going to explain this language? Like, how are we going to explain the interpretation of it and the solution? And all of those things end up filtering into the dialogue. I don't remember that line in particular, but I have written lines for Spock. Let me tell you, that's a thing. I revised my previous answer. That's the weirdest thing. It's like, Spock shouldn't say this. Spock should say this. And then frickin' Spock, the character, says words that I put down. And that
such as
so bizarre. I think the comet episode when he is going to do like the panspermia where they don't want to interfere with it was Children of the Comet. That was episode 2. That was one where I cried. That was the one where I cried. And he's talking about how it's going to affect the balance of the atmosphere. Like all of that was just kind of tweaking the dialogue and making sure it read right. And what's fun, I think, is a fun and unique challenge too that has made me a better writer is the ability to like match the cadence of the characters and the pacing of the moment. Because like we can explain panspermia and how, annihilating a comet in an atmosphere is going to change all these different, you could explain it for 3 or 4 lines. People are going to probably check out. So you got to be like, okay, we have literally 8 syllables in which to explain this.
But you're saying that would work is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yeah. Sweet. Cool.
Yeah.
Eat it, haters.
Well, that's actually a great answer because it kind of leads me into my next. We're going to ask you to judge a little contest for us.
Okay.
I asked my co-host to pick what they think was the least plausible science outside of like the big ones, time travel, stuff like that from Strange New World Season 1. And we're going to each give you what we think is our least plausible. And you're going to tell us who is the least wrong, most right, something like that.
Okay. Got it. Love it.
All right. Who wants to go first?
It has to be Cameron. It can't be me.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like using childhood suffering to power floating cities is a cheat. So I won't mention that one. The one that I kind of bumped on is this, and I think I've seen you mention that stellar addresses, stellar geography is kind of like one of the big kind of misnomers of science fiction, of popular science fiction. And so in Memento Mori, which does have a lot of great science in it, though, I was wondering about the wisdom of building a colony on a planet that seems to be in a solar system with a brown dwarf and a black hole. How does the solar system work? Can you describe the solar system to me?
Great question. My first one, because this is going to be embarrassing, which colony was actually there?
The one that
the
the
beginning
Gorn
of the
attacked?
episode?
Yeah, at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Okay.
Yeah. Finibus 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, I'm never gonna bash anything, especially ones that
we're
I
not here to
worked on.
bash. We're just
And I'm here to yes and this process. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
So, one can imagine a star system in which you have a binary star system. So you have a star and a star orbiting each other. One has died, so it's become a black hole. The other star is fairly stable. Let's imagine you establish the colony after the black hole has happened, which is doable, right? Because otherwise supernova would probably be not great for that colony. So you have a black hole, you have a normal star, which we never see, but that's fine. There's lots of configurations that we can have a binary star system about. Yes. Yeah. And brown dwarfs are famously just like little wanderers through our universe, and so it got captured by the black hole. It's going on. It's because a brown dwarf by any other name, as in something that formed in orbit around a star, would be a gas giant. Theoretically, it's like a lot of gas that just wasn't quite enough to make it into a star. But it's not around, like, it formed on its own. It's just a little ball of gas that made its merry way through our galaxy and got captured by said black hole and is orbiting it, and the colony is like around the other star, and we're good. Does that work?
Planet. All right. Sure.
All right.
Sure.
I was actually once described as not having enough gas to make a star, but that was incorrect.
That's just wrong.
So, yeah.
You're just wandering aimlessly through our galaxy. Yeah.
That part is true and kind of short. So let's see. I think the most unrealistic piece of science. I actually have two answers, John. I know it's cheating. My first answer is I thought it was very unrealistic when Una and Dr. Mbenga went over the intercom and said, "Here's some dangerous stuff. Listen to the scientists." And everybody else went, "Okay," and then did that. I was like, not realistic at all. Like, that would never happen. Like, I can't, that my immersion is broken, but
it is a story.
We do have a question about the light virus. It seems like, and I know, maybe virology not high on the astrophysicist list, but virus that lives on photons gotta be on your list somewhere. So, A, where did that idea come from? Do we think that's maybe possible? And B, is it a bad virus if it kills the hosts, or is it a successful virus if it kills the hosts? Ooh. John, we're just asking questions.
I know, you guys broke the rules like we always do on everything we do. I'll play by the rules, but you go ahead. You go ahead, Jesse. Yeah.
I loved working on the light virus episode. That was a lot of fun to try to play around with how we describe this. Because for so many things, because the story is so classic, like TOS style story, right? You come back from an away mission with this weird virus that is inescapable, and the idea that it occurs through light. And I think, how did we phrase it? It was that the virus was carried by photons at a specific frequency. And so there were ways that you had to counteract the frequency, or you had to use the polarization of light to kill the virus or to keep it from transmitting. Yeah, that one was fun. But the language was very carefully chosen for that episode. So the first thing is, light carries virus. Good. Yes, and here's all the ways we're going to describe it that are not ridiculous, or not describe it, as the case may be. But I still love that story. I think that was so cool. That was so much fun. And what was the last part of your question?
Is it a bad virus if it drives the host to basically kill themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but also it carries itself on light, so I feel like it's pretty sustaining. Like, if it was only transmitted through human contact, that would be different.
That's true.
and it's pulling people toward light sources. So, like, for example, had Hammer gotten killed by his 10,000 degree ball of magma, you now have a super spreader event happening in that room because of the heat, not because of Hammer so much.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we didn't think about it hard enough during the episode, Cameron. That's all that happened.
I was too busy making the joke about the guy who looks like a moth wanting the flames.
That's true. Yeah. And you guys, I went back and watched. His ass is not that square when she lifts him up. It's actually
square.
No, it's actually mostly the seam of the pants. Like it's actually the pants seam mostly. It's I just go check it out. Yeah. All right, John. So
well, it's a good thing that wasn't my choice for most unrealistic science. Mine, I think what I just didn't see happening was, like you described, Spock flying near a comet and a shuttlecraft putting off enough radiant heat in the vacuum of space to actually break up and melt a comet. I don't buy that. I think the shuttle would melt before it would radiate enough heat.
Ooh, okay. Challenge accepted. I did math that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have a notebook you can show us? Can you show us your homework?
I do not have the ability to show my work, which kills my inner professor a little bit. I'm so sorry. But the funny thing is my father is actually a meteorologist who has like zero interest in science fiction. My dad is the most, like, he will read documentaries about like wars and he will watch PBS, and that's the extent of like stretching his imagination. I love you, Dad. And so science fiction for him is like right out. But I ran it past him, the idea of the comet, how much radiation it would take, how much like percentage of the comet would need to break off to sufficiently change the atmosphere. And it worked. It wasn't that much. Like, you really don't need that much water ice breaking off from the comet in order to do it. Now, the question about the radiation capability of the shuttle is a different question, but we've seen those shuttles take a heck of a lot of damage. So I feel like the threshold for pain is pretty high. But the science of the comet and what we saw fall off and how massive it was and how much radiation it would take to break it off, check. Did the math.
Nice.
All right. We have proven to everybody conclusively we are not doctors. We just watch them on TV.
Do not go to podcasters for your science advice, unless they're doing a science podcast. Maybe.
Yeah, that's good advice right there. All right, Jesse, you want to take the next section?
I do, and I generally have a lot of help from our wonderful audience, and I plan to lean on that heavily this evening. But I have to ask Dr. Erin up front, for all of us that are Trekkies, I don't know if you have come to realize this, but Trekkies can sometimes have let's call it a love for specificity. And in Strange New Worlds, which I am just the biggest fan of, you can ask anyone, the star dates are a little they're sort of like the star dates kind of remind us of TOS in a certain way. I think you know what I mean. And you are an astrophysicist. If there were anybody who could tell me what a star date is, how it's calculated, and are they ignoring that in Strange New Worlds, it's you. So those three things.
Audience, she's pulling out some D6s and just getting ready to roll them on the table.
You joke. I could. Oh, freaking star dates, man. Okay, so technically I am the keeper of the star dates in all of Star Trek, which no pressure at all. This isn't a secret, but I do have a method for calculating star dates. We didn't take what exists on the internet, because there's lots of other fan calculations for star dates. We literally just went from scratch, and we were like, what's been said? What are the dates that any of them that have been said have been compared to? And what look like outliers, computer errors. And let's go into our good old y equals mx plus b, and we're going to calculate star dates for specific eras. That said, when it comes to Strange New Worlds, I believe the executive decision was to do it TOS style, which is pick a random number. And so when I talk about science in Star Trek, I have two explanations for anything that I give you. One, I like to call them my pre-Cochrane and my post-Cochrane explanations. Pre-Cochrane is we're making a TV show and these are the decisions we have to make. Post-Cochrane is Star Trek universe rules. Okay, this is why it exists from a non-TV show explanation. So I like to live in the post-Cochrane world, and that's why I explain it that way. I don't like to use the word real or fake because it's real to all of us. So the post-Cochrane explanation for TOS stardates, which has bled into Strange New Worlds, is that stardates are not just a time. It is a combination of the time as well as your location within that galaxy, all embedded into one number. Do we have that number? No. Do we know how it works? No. But that's how we come up with the stardates in TOS, which they obviously abandon later, about a century later, and have a strictly stardate equals time rule. So yes, well observed. I did have calculations for the Strange New Worlds era, but we decided to take it in the TOS direction, which is fine, but it did not go unnoticed.
And the only reason that I bring it up is because we noticed it and I pointed it out as something that I love about Strange New Worlds, because it has to be a clear choice, right? That's why we had to ask, but it's like they know. They know the audience they're making the show for. They know how it's going to go.
Yeah.
It has to be a choice. So I deeply, deeply appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good time for us to hear from our very good friend, Mark.
Hi, Open Pike Night. It's Engineer Mark. I am glad that Dr. Erim Macdonald is going to be on the show, mainly because whenever I am talking Star Trek with someone who may not be a big fan, one of the points I wind up making is the work that goes into including science in the show. So, Doctor, I do have a question. In vetting the science, does the history of Trek influencing scientific innovation in the real world fit in? And if so, where? Live long and prosper.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Like you said, it's no question that Star Trek has been around for such a long time, and a lot of the innovations that we've seen on Star Trek have come to be realized even within our own lifetime. Even flip phones seem archaic now, but the communicators at the time, that was new and innovative. They were video communicating, which again, also, like, how would we do that? What technology is it? We're doing that right now. And so thinking about future technologies and how that plays into Star Trek, I think what's just so fun is just taking our current technologies and taking it one step further. I mentioned the communicator. I think that's a great example of this. Like, you think about 1960s, people are on landlines. The natural progression is that that's going to be wireless. You can do it planet to space, all of those sort of things. And coming up with those ideas inspire future generations, or even the generations now, to invent that stuff. I personally think, there are some technologies that we can't ever have that we've seen in Star Trek based on our knowledge of physics. Unfortunately, the transporter is one of them because of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We just have to invent a Heisenberg compensator. We don't know what that is or how it works. How does it work? It works very well.
But you need four of them.
Exactly.
It works by compensating for the Heisenberg principle.
Exactly. And it does that very well. But there are things like, I think there are two innovations that we've seen in Star Trek that I think are kind of the next ones to come up. And a lot of that is necessity driving innovation. So one, is the medical tricorder, because we've lived the last couple years with a disease that is easily transmissible. And so being able to do diagnostics from a distance or without contact is fairly appealing and more appealing than it was 5 years ago. And so that drives that innovation. And I think we're going to start to see more of those. I mean, I'm wearing something on my wrist right now, that's taking, my heart rate and will alert me if my heart rate seems weird. And that's cool. It tells me to stop running when I'm overdoing it. But then the other technology that I think we're coming close to that really excites me is a replicator to be able to make food. And this is because we have two different innovations that are happening at the same time. One is in 3D printers. I mean, even 5 years ago, you could not have convinced me that I would be able to spend a couple $100s and have a resin 3D printer sitting on my desk. Like, that's insane that I can be. I literally 3D printed, well, my husband 3D printed Princess Leia's lightsaber for me. That's bonkers that we have that technology now. But in addition to that, we also have a lot of food science research. This sudden influx of things like Impossible Meat and Beyond Burgers aren't because there was suddenly a market for it. It's because scientists discovered the protein that makes red meat taste like red meat. And that was something that we hadn't done that before. And now we can synthesize that. Now we can actually just create that protein because we know what it is. So the combination of being able to isolate these proteins combined with 3D printing technology, I feel is getting us closer to actually having a replicator. Now, it might take like 8 hours to get a pretty sad burger, but like, I'd still take it.
It's funny because the first thing I 3D printed was Leia's slave bikini for my wife. So it's just kind of funny how that.
Good. I see the priorities.
I don't have a 3D printer.
I was convinced you were going to say universal translator because I'm seeing the speakers now where people are like, just put the speaker here and you'll understand the people in the room. And I'm like, that blows my mind.
I mean, yeah, genuinely the reason I didn't say that is because I feel like we're pretty much there. Like that I can install a language on my phone and turn the camera on and hold it over a menu and it translates it in real time to English. Like that's bonkers.
How cool that the universal translator is kind of blasé now. Like, so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I really genuinely love that.
I'm going to play one of our other callers' questions.
Hello, Open Pike. This is Kelly, your antipodal. Thank you, Dr. Macdonald, for participating in this podcast. I have two questions. What is the best scientific conundrum that you have helped solve on any Star Trek production, but especially if it was Star Trek Strange New Worlds? Secondly, some of Star Trek the original series technology has been made real in our society by creative scientists. Their desktop computers are now sitting on our desks. Their communicators are our cell phones. Some of their medical technology is now available in various stages in our hospitals. What is one Star Trek science tech from any series that you think scientists might be able to create within the next 10 years or so? Best wishes and thank you very much.
Awesome.
Kelly, it is good to finally hear your voice.
Yes.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, you've already answered the second half, but I'm dying to know the first.
Yeah, I think with the first one, oh God, the biggest scientific conundrum. So I'll answer the general Star Trek and then I'll give one specific to Strange New Worlds. But I do think the biggest one that I'm the most proud of was the burn. Honestly, that first assignment to really science dilithium, like we came up with some cool science of dilithium. The idea that there are, again, this is all fiction, but the idea that there are subatomic particles that exist in subspace that dilithium is combined with that makes it so powerful for regulating warp capabilities, and that touch into subspace is what made it so vulnerable and hitting the resonant frequency of that. Like the science of the burn, I feel, was a really big problem. And I'm very proud of the answer that we came up with for that. And if people want the more detailed answer to that, I did write an article with my colleague, Professor Mohammed Noor, on the science of the burn. You can find it on StarTrek.com. But with Strange New Worlds, I think it was Memento Mori. That one was really fun to talk about the Pike maneuver. and how they would escape the Gorn, and at what point you would have to like detonate something, and how time dilation affects what they see, and that you could slingshot around without being seen first, and just the whole dynamics of them in the brown dwarf as it's disappearing, and then how they slingshot around the black hole. That was just a really, really fun episode to work on.
So you've mentioned a couple of redheaded scientists that you've enjoyed. Let's play Michelle's question now, because I think there's probably one more in your list.
Hey, Open Pike Night. Really enjoyed your interview with Davey Perez last time. I adore the way that he loves the original series. And the more interviews I hear from Strange New Worlds creatives on Open Pike Night, the more I'm realizing that they are big fans of Star Trek too, which is awesome. So thank you for that. Keep up the good work and keep trying to get those scoops for season 2. And this week, my mind is blown. We have an astrophysicist, scientist. Welcome to Dr. Erim Macdonald. I loved your appearance on the Ready Room where you explained the brown dwarf cloud, I think it was, in Memento Mori. And I just have to say, if you had been my science teacher, I may not have gotten D's in science. Science has never been my strong suit, although I did have some great teachers, particularly my 9th grade earth science teacher, who had Star Trek like pictures and photos all over the wall that helped me pass. I think these extra credit bonus questions actually got me through earth science. But the question I'd like to ask you is actually related to my Crusher connection of the week. And it has to do with warp bubbles. Dr. Beverly Crusher, one of my favorite characters on TNG, she was trapped in a warp bubble. And I was just wondering, how do warp bubbles work? How do they make ships go? And how did Beverly get trapped in one? And what did you think about how she got out, if you are familiar with that episode, Remember Me? So thank you so much for coming on, for being a consultant and keeping Star Trek somewhat grounded in reality. Live long and prosper.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. It has been a hot minute since I've seen Remember Me, so I don't remember how she got out of it, but I remember the episode. And so we'll take a step back. The first thing is about like warp bubbles. What are they? How does it work? Mm-hmm. So, the idea behind warp bubbles is that when you are on the surface of space-time, that trampoline, you're dipping it down. It's hard to move fast. And you cannot move faster than the speed of light. The lighter you are, the less you impact that fabric. And when you have no mass, you just coast in a straight line, which is the speed of light. If you want to go faster than the speed of light, like we do in Star Trek, you actually have to warp space-time around your ship, and then space-time itself goes faster than the speed of light, because nothing precludes that from happening. So you build this bubble of space-time around your ship, and then that bubble carries you faster than the speed of light. If you want to go exponentially faster, you build a bubble around that bubble, and that's like warp factor 2. A bubble around that bubble is warp factor 3. But the key is for the ship itself, inside that bubble, their space-time, their knowledge of space and time, and the physics rules don't change. Like, they're fine within that bubble. It's the outer layers of the bubble that are really all timey-wimey and weird. And if I remember Me enough, ironically, Beverly Crusher's trapped in the warp bubble and she's trying to get out. Does she keep reliving the same moment, or is that a different episode?
No, there's a light phenomena that keeps popping up every once in a while.
It's the Traveler. It's a Traveler episode.
Yeah, the Traveler and Wesley kind of open a gate, but
people are disappearing around her.
Through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. I mean, really, the big thing is with like warp bubbles and any sort of messing around with space-time is you're going to be messing with causality. You're going to be messing with time dilation. So what your experience of time is different or relative to other people's experience of time. And so I'm sorry I don't have that episode as readily memorized as I do some of my Voyager episodes. But I promise I'm going to go watch it tonight and I'll redeem myself. But I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, and I'm sorry, but you're not folding a piece of paper in half and sticking a pen through it. I'm so confused right now.
I'm pretty sure that's
I have no
right.
idea what you're talking
about. That's called a wormhole. This is a warp bubble.
So what you're saying is that if I theoretically wanted to go really fast through space-time and I couldn't build a warp bubble, that I would need to somehow affect my mass?
Yes.
Is there a mass effect?
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah,
no,
that's okay.
no. Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that?
I would pull on that thread, but given that you haven't played it, I'm not going to explain the science of Element Zero and how that affects your mass. Because there is
so excited.
a hell of a lot of science behind it.
I'm so excited.
If you run a positive current through Element Zero, then it's going to positively increase.
Let's set up Mariah next.
Hi, Open Pike Night. This is Mariah calling from Seattle. And Dr. Erin, I'm so excited to hear all about real science and science fiction. My question is about how you determine that something is not plausible. Because there's lots of things that we haven't done yet, or if you think about it a little sideways, it could sort of make sense in the Star Trek universe. But maybe what are some examples, and how do you decide when something is like too far-fetched, super duper doesn't make sense? Where is the line? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mariah. Yeah, I would say that's probably my biggest challenge of my job, to be honest, as a science advisor, is it's more knowing what not to say and when you need to rein it back and just don't explain what's going on. I think anytime you try to explain something that is far-fetched, you run the risk of getting yourself into trouble. And I would say actually an example from Strange New Worlds with this is in the first episode where they're going to their away mission and Nurse Chapel hyposprays them with the gene changer that makes them appear like the species on the planet. And a lot of that was like, okay, let's rein in the explanation. Like we don't, it just happens. She does it. There's a little bit of technobabble that kind of says we're altering your genes and it's going to appear different and it's going to wear off eventually. But we don't need to talk about the rate at which it's going to changing, how the DNA is going to rapidly propagate through your system. Like, so it's because it serves the story well to have that. And there's funny moments, right, where it starts to wear off and Spock doesn't metabolize it as well and all of these other things. Like, it's worth keeping in there. It's just, let's not explain it because none of you brought it up as a bad explanation of science, right? Like, you just bought it. We didn't try to explain it. And so that's
just Bush sold it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that knowing when not to explain something, I think, is the more important approach.
You guys, I think we may have failed because we explain like how everything works in our show all the time. Like,
I don't know how this microphone works. Are you kidding me?
That's true. I mean, I'm not like, I also don't know. I'm not singling Cam out. But speaking of singling people out, we do have one more listener question, and this is from our very good friend Peter. Peter is one of our longest supporters here at Open Pike Night.
Yeah. And our first ever caller calling in again.
Hi, it's Peter again. Thank you, Dr. Macdonald, for joining Open Pike Night and sharing your experience as science advisor for the current Star Trek shows. I've always been interested in science. I considered majoring in chemistry in college. While that did not happen, I did take several astronomy classes and ended up one class short of getting my astronomy minor. I would like to be more involved as a citizen scientist. Do you have any advice or guidance on how to be a better advocate and supporter of science, as well as how to keep up with the current developments and discoveries in science? Congratulations on your role as Star Trek Science Advisor, and I look forward to seeing more of your work on upcoming seasons of Star Trek. Live long and prosper.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that can relate to your situation. And as someone with your background, and an interest in science, I would recommend, there are sites like space.com or Astronomy Now that are, and podcasts as well, that are great sources for current news, particularly in astronomy, that I think explain it fairly well, if you're interested in just personally keeping up with it. But I think being a good advocate for science is once you have that knowledge, and you feel like you're in a position to impart it on other people, I think as a science communicator, one of the lessons that I've learned is it's so important to not make other people feel dumb, that you think about people who are asking a genuine question about why we have phases of the moon, or how does the sun affect seasons, and things that might seem a little obvious or might be a little nuanced, but if you laugh at them, and I say you generally as a science consultant or science advisor, if you make them feel like their question isn't valid, then that stops them from ever asking a scientist a question again. And so that's what I think is so important for anyone out there who's involved in science communication. It's really a two-way street to meet the audience at their level without making them feel dumb. Sometimes people are trolling, and that happens. The question I always give people who I'm not quite sure if they're asking me about the Earth being flat or about the moon landings is prod a little bit and then just say, is there anything that I could say that would convince you otherwise? And sometimes they'll say no, and then you just end the conversation there. But, I was at an event one time and I had a woman come up to me and genuinely ask about the moon landing. Like, this woman was a little older and she had just fallen down a YouTube rabbit hole of moon landing conspiracies and just wanted to ask someone with a scientific background about it. And her questions were fully genuine. And we spent probably 15, 20 minutes just talking about all the reasons why we've landed on the moon, why things look this way, why they don't look this way, and all of that. And it's just about respecting your audience. Now, personally, as someone who's interested in like science for the people, I would highly recommend checking out a website called Zooniverse, Zooniverse, that gives data sets, like massive astronomy data sets, biology data sets, and all these other things to the public to farm through. Because actually, like, our brains are great statistical analyzers. You look at a set of data and you can pick out outliers much better than a trained artificial intelligence can. And so there are things like searching through Kepler data for exoplanets, where you're just like, hey, this looks like a repeating anomaly in here, and you flag it, and then that kind of bumps it up the list so other people look at it, and then they'll eventually get to the people who are analyzing the data and they'll go, oh crap, that's actually an exoplanet, and you'll get some credit for that. So that's a pretty fun way to start. And also check out your local astronomical society. There's usually some great people there and great opportunities for doing astronomy observing without needing a technical background or even a telescope. People are always happy to have you look through their telescope.
That's really cool. And Cameron, I am sorry that I made fun of you for not knowing about the Great Dark Spot.
You should be.
I judge both of you for not knowing how your microphones work.
As you probably should.
Fair. All right, well, we've come to one final Star Trek question, Dr. Erin. We are going to ask about Season 2, and if there is a single word you can give us about Season 2 that out of context will mean nothing, but when we watch Season 2, we'll be able to go, that's what she was talking about.
Oh. Colorful.
Colorful.
All right.
I like it.
Yeah, I'll stick with that. I don't think the Eye of Sauron of CBS is going to yell at me right now.
No. Henry Alonso Myers gave us 2 words, so you're good. You're safe.
Okay. Yeah. Oh,
so
man. Yeah.
Orion cocktails. Maybe colorful Orion cocktails.
Orion cocktails. I'm not going to speculate. Medusans, I'm not going to speculate, you guys. I don't like to speculate on the show. So if I'm not mistaken, Bruce Horak was so like distraught by the possibility of breaking an NDA that he was like, he thought for minutes, and we're like, you know what?
His silence was an answer in and of itself.
There you go.
Seriously. We're pretty sure he's playing a Klingon. I think that's what's going to happen.
I love it.
So.
Have you seen episodes from Season 2 yet?
Nope.
Do you get to watch them? No?
No.
You've read them? Okay.
Ooh.
Yep. I'm excited. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be
So
great.
are we.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I just say,
Genuinely.
I'm bored of this already.
Yeah, exactly. I just can't wait for it to be over. Whatever. No, it's so good. It's one of those shows you just can't wait for the world to see it. Like, I want to talk about this now. This is so good. So, yeah, it's exciting.
But only one word. That's all you can talk about right now.
Colorful.
All right. Well, speaking of waiting for things to be over, John has one final question to put to you.
All right, Dr. Erin Macdonald. Open Pike Night is an open mic night themed podcast. And so we ask our guests to share a joke with us. Do you have a joke for us on stage tonight?
I do. I have a few prepared, but I think given our conversation, I know which one I'm going to share. So we talked about why the transporter can't work, right? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Basically, it states that you can never know exactly where every particle is or how fast it's going. The more you know about one of those, you lose about the other. So the more you know where a particle is, the less you know about its motion. So a cop pulls over Heisenberg. He says, "Sir, do you know how fast you were going?" "Nope, but I know exactly where I am." Says, "Up. You were going 77 miles an hour. Great. Now I'm lost." You're welcome.
Oh, that Heisenberg, he's such a rascal.
I know.
And we ask every guest, and that might be one of the more prepared deliveries that we have had so far. I mean, like, seriously.
I
thank
tell
you.
that joke a lot. And it's so great. Like, I tell it to non-Star Trek audiences. It's even better with Star Trek audiences because we know the Heisenberg compensator.
Well, next time we get you on, we'll ask you about Heisenberg and what your path would have been had you gone Breaking Bad instead of Star Trek. So.
I like it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This was so fun. I just had an absolute delight.
Likewise.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
It's been great having you here, and we definitely we could have a whole series with you as Strange New Worlds goes on. So we hope to talk to you again.
Yes. You are part of many projects. Is there any that you'd like to promote right now? I mean, I wanted to talk about your Space-Time Productions. So I don't know if that's something you want to speak on or...
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, this is a production company I started this past year to kind of be the house for a lot of my consulting work, a lot of my writing work, but also gave me the opportunity to start producing films. My work as sort of an engineering manager has made me very interested in the production side of things, getting films made and off the ground. And I was lucky enough this year to produce our first short film with Mary Chieffo, Chancellor Laurel from Star Trek Discovery, stars in it. Her girlfriend wrote the script and stars in it as well. The short is called Every Morning. It's currently out to festivals, but should be available online shortly once we go through that whole circuit. And I'm just really excited to start telling stories, with a unique perspective, and I think especially helmed by people who are not normally represented in Hollywood. So I'm very excited to see where that goes, and stay tuned for more.
Are they primarily science fiction stories or?
Very much so, because I think especially it's this idea of representation both on screen and behind the scenes. And I think we don't get to see a lot of stories from queer people or women or people of color in the sci-fi realm as much. And so being able to tell those stories just really excites me.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
We've been speaking tonight with Dr. Erin Macdonald, science advisor for literally every Star Trek series that is currently in production and airing. So thank her every time you can. And I told you she would be your favorite Star Trek doctor. Dr. Erin, thanks for speaking with us tonight.
Thank you so much. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. As always, we want to keep every episode of Open Pike Night free to all. And to make that possible, please head over to patreon.com/openpike or our website, openpike.com. Our supporters on Patreon have already had a video greeting from the recording and the post discussion after they enjoyed the podcast episode. That's one of the many benefits you too can have when you become a patron and support us for as little as $2 a month. Jesse, how else can our listeners help?
Of course, the easiest way that you can help is to go to openpike.com/join us and record your voice clip there directly to send to us. You may also sign up for our newsletter, which will come in your email about once a week, maybe a little bit more frequently than that, depending. And that will keep you apprised of all the guests that are coming into Open Pike Night and how you can get your voice into their ears. Now, of course, you can also follow the show on Twitter, probably still at Open Pike, definitely still on Instagram at Open Pike, and you can join the brand new Open Pike Backstage Discord server where you can get basically all of those same perks kind of all in one place, but it's a little more of a chatty environment. And I gotta say, we have custom time crystal emoji, so check out our Discord. There's a lot of places that you can find Open Pike, is what I'm saying.
And Cam, where can people find more of you?
Yes, as perhaps alluded to in this interview, I do not yet know the fate of Barclay because I am still watching Star Trek The Next Generation for the very first time. Season 6, I mean, my shirt is a little less green, but I am the titular green shirt of Green Shirt, a newbie's trek through the Next Generation, where we are watching said show. Find us at GreenShirt87 on Twitter and wherever you are listening to this podcast.
Jesse, where can folks find more of you?
If for whatever reason you need more of me in your ears, just stay in this podcasting app and search for Sudden But Inevitable. It's the podcast where I turn longtime friends into brand new fans of the shows I feel they probably should have seen by now. Shows like Firefly, Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, I know people that haven't seen those. So I remedied that situation. And if you like to hear people get forced to like stuff, check out Sudden But Inevitable.
And I can be found on Twitter at John T. Bolds, and I suppose you can probably find me online soon on PlayStation playing Mass Effect, because I never have, and apparently I really, really need to. Because
it's been a long time. I will be joining you.
Yeah, this episode could have been probably 4 hours of just Mass Effect discussion, and I'm not going to say that there's no chance that episode will never happen, because it very well could.
I definitely am smelling streams in the future. Is that what that smell is, you guys? It's either Captain Pike's breakfast or it's live streams.
I'm just going to say that I don't know how engaging watching someone read reams of sci-fi material is, but that is one of the most pleasurable parts of playing Mass Effect, is the dense sci-fi material you can read in that game.
My guess is that it depends on who's reading it. So
Perhaps.
We'll have competing streams and the people can vote. John T. Bolts, take us away.
It's been a long night, and the Open Pike Night crew has a lot of science to go catch up on. Intimidating amounts of science, but we know where to reach out to for help. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Be sure to tip your servers. You can go anywhere you want, but you can't stay here unless you know how fast you're going. I think that science is even wrong.
Hey, if her joke was correct, then that science is correct.
Love it.
Yeah, I saw they put out a thing that was like new Star Trek furniture and bedding and stuff for Crate and Barrel teen, and I was like, teen? Like, I guess I could bring my toddler in there, but
yeah,
but like
room to grow in.
I'm sure
they're not
they
gonna
have,
believe me.
Yeah, queen or king size teen.
I mean, it's Crate and Barrel, so
Yeah. The people who shop at Crate and Barrel, definitely their teenagers are sleeping in a queen to king size bed.
Exactly. Yeah, no growing up in a twin long for those kids. Yeah.